Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Freedom International Livestream. And we're happy again and excited that we can be together to this platform. And we could also provide information and motivation and inspiration to whoever that or whatever topic that resonates to any of you. And today, I'm very happy to welcome Alex Dimitrios back. Welcome, Alex.
It's great to be back. I enjoyed our conversation last time.
Yeah, we did a lot of show and tell of his memes and images because I like images as well. So Alex Dimitrios is a co-founder of Space Commune. He's an independent journalist and a podcast host. And this Space Commune is a video and news platform that focuses on the intersection between geopolitics and energy. And recently, um, you and your what's his name again? The co-founder.
Fox, Fox Green.
Yeah, Fox Green. Fox Green and Alex Dimitrios did that um, documentary film, Energy Empire, and I'll just let him describe that a little bit more. But one thing that I like you to do, I mean, I like to invite our audience to do is to follow him, follow Dimitrios in his Substack, okay? Because his writings present events, people, books, movies, and many other significant like information that you may think is insignificant and they're not connected. But if you can just look at it categorically, you will see that, wow, it's like a Venn diagram. It's like the Russian doll that you just keep, or the onion, as they say, that you just keep peeling one layer after the other, and then you go down to the deep root of whatever is in front of you. So we have a hard time nowadays of what's happening. We're too confusing. So um, when it comes to climate change or climate whatever they call it, green energy, whatever again they want to call it, i I like people whom I can depend, who are truthful, who knows how to connect the dots, and like as they said, they know how to see the forest, not just the tree. Okay, so Alex, go ahead and let them know also, because I'm going to add to our title your Substack as well. Invite them and go, please tell them about the Energy Empire
Yeah.
documentary.
Yeah. So our Substack is spacecommune.substack.com. That's a great way to keep up with everything that we're doing. So we always have articles and appearances. But right now, something that we're also working on is this documentary series called Energy/Empire. And it's really, Fox Green is primarily working on that. I help a little bit with some of the research, but and it goes over some of the common themes that we're always covering with Space Commune, which is the decades or centuries long conspiracies to control the world using inputs like food, energy, things that we all need to live, and how narratives around these things are manipulated by elites and different interests like the British Empire and Wall Street to basically influence how people think and to control them by saying that in some countries organic food is terrible. You shouldn't, it's not as good as GMO food. In other countries, organic food, you should only eat organic food, and that's how you fight back. And it's all BS. It's really all about creating narratives to get people to hate something that might be actually good for them. And it might actually increase their freedom, their sovereignty. So Energy Empire is about some of the stories around that, specifically focusing more on Cuba and Sri Lanka. So Cuba is a country where in America, we all know the usual talking point is that when a conservative person hears somebody talking about socialism or some kind of guaranteed rights or some kind of guaranteed healthcare, they'll say, "Oh, well, look at Cuba. They have bread lines in Cuba. People can't eat there." And really, Cuba has been starved by the United States, by the empire, of its ability to feed itself, to take care of its citizens, And the way they've done that is with this blockade that's happened ever since the USSR collapsed of fertilizer. So they don't have the fertilizer that they need. These are the inputs that they need to have yields on the island where they can either grow commodity crops that they can sell and make a lot of money, or have yields that are big enough to feed their people so that people get the calories and nutrition that they need. And this is why in Cuba, people are, um, their weights have gone down quite a bit. Their capabilities have gone down quite a bit because they're being starved. Um, so what we're looking at is that the sick thing in the West is that a lot of people who are in the organic food space, they look at Cuba and they say, "Oh, that's an example of a country that's doing it right. The people there are so much better off because they don't have the GMOs and the seed oils and the other inputs that go into agriculture." And it's believed that, oh well, those people, we should aspire to be like that. When in fact, those people are starving to death. And so, that was part one that's already out. That a piece of energy empire that was focused on Cuba. Now we're going to look at Sri Lanka, which is a different case study, where it's more of a controlled demolition of a sovereign nation using food as a weapon. And that's where in Sri Lanka, in 2021, they suddenly decided to stop using um, fertilizer and other fossil fuel inputs in their food. They went 100% all organic. Within months, the country descended into chaos because, well, when you suddenly do that, you lose your ability to grow food, you lose your ability to feed your people, and the people revolted. The country descended into chaos, and now it's being looted by oligarchs for every little penny and resource that they have. And what catalyzed that? A sudden change from going from more modern agricultural practices to this 100% organic, no fossil fuel delusion. And there's evidence that, in the documentary that will be coming out within the next few weeks, part two of Energy Empire, there's evidence that, it's a commonwealth of the former British Empire. And there are agents of the British Empire that to this day are pushing this 100% organic stuff. So we'll see in the documentary. I don't want to spoil it too much, but if you want to know about that, definitely follow us on spacecommune.substack.com and also spacecommune.com.
Thank you, Alex. And in my opinion, that is really important to know, because sometimes we just feel like uh, when people are hungry or they're starving, it's like it's because it is their fault or because they're lazy. But yet they forgot that maybe there are certain factors that planted it to be that way. And I just finished listening to Joaquin Flores today's live stream, and he reiterated again that there is no organic color revolution, meaning that was naturally developed.
Mm-hmm.
However, when people are hungry, that's when people might just go crazy and be on the street. So then but there's no reason to be hungry, because we know that we are, as human beings, we are creative enough. There's so many much that we can do in whether, and when being organic, it doesn't work, then it's okay to change. Don't be stuck with the misinformation that we all have. And that's the same, I think, when it comes to our health, because the land and our physical body, they're considered the same. So if we get stuck so much with, like, okay, we can't, if there's no, like, let's say in our area, because in all different areas in towns, some cities, some municipalities, they literally don't have organic food, and that's by design again. Okay, and then so wherever you are, whatever situation we have, when it comes to the land and to our body, we have to be really be open to what is happening around, and who's trying to dictate our decisions and our choices. So
Sure.
thank you for doing this series, and it's truly important. I and for the audience, Our title is RIP, Anti-Nuclear Movement, Hello, Anti-China Movement. And this is the title of Alex Dimitrios' latest Substack article. But prior to this, he had you had very good series of three-part articles on 3 Mile Island. And I just want to say the title so that the viewers could go and really look at that at the spacecommune.com or the spacecommune substack.com. So it's the first one is the New Age conspiracy to manufacture nuclear hysteria. And it's important because even for me, I didn't grow up in America. There was not, there's no internet yet during that time. So we didn't really know the whole truth. And then the second article that he made is exploring 3 Mile Island possible sabotage. And with a question that he posted as was 3 Mile Island an inside job? And again, even educated people think it wasn't an inside job. And that's all we'll be fearful. And of course, the last one is the how 3 Mile Island fed the American anti-nuclear movement. And then, of course, here's the last one is just kind of like putting it all together, the anti-nuclear movement and hello anti-China movement. So how about you can maybe perhaps start with the the books that you included. You mentioned books in your articles, and one of the books and this person is a little bit more known to the public is the book on the movement that Ralph Nader did. Who is really Ralph Nader and what has he been doing to really give a to maybe like not understand what's happening? Because when the word nuclear comes to our mind, all we could imagine is what happened in Hiroshima. Okay. And then all the other news that, okay, like that the Dick Gregory short video, right? And the Jane Fonda movement. So that's what we imagine. But maybe you
Yeah,
could educate us more.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's a great place to start. Is Hiroshima and Nagasaki were those first two times that the public at large really heard the word nuclear or had any idea of what the atom can do. That was really destructive, really horrible. And I think if FDR wasn't murdered, likely, I don't think he would have allowed that to happen. But it was the beginning of the Cold War. They had to demonstrate this nuclear capability to the Soviet Union, um, to start the very regrettable Cold War. But after that, Eisenhower in the early 50s started something called Atoms for Peace. And it wasn't totally egalitarian. It was something that I think they were also trying to disarm the Soviet Union using that. But the ideas of Atom for Peace were that we can solve the world's problems using this technology for good and not for destruction, using the nuclear technology to help people um, power their homes, to bring electricity to areas of the world where they're burning dung or burning candles late at night, just to be able to read, things like that. So atoms for peace, that was a great idea. And then in the 50s and 60s, nuclear energy was seen as kind of a miracle in the United States. We had this massive build out of nuclear energy, the fastest build up of nuclear power um, anywhere in the world, except for what China is doing now. Uh, but then, as we hit the early 70s, we started to see this a shift happening. And I guess I'll start in the 60s. There started to be a revival that was brewing in the 60s of kind of this anthroposophic, Gnostic, mystical transcendentalism, where there's something brewing out of what I believe that a lot of the genesis of it was kind of around Stanford and the MK Ultra program, where people were starting to experiment with LSD, and the CIA and academics were starting to research about, well, how can we bring man back into an animal-like state? How can we control people by removing their ability to reason and to make them believe that a human is no different from a pig or a bear or or a tree or a rock, changing what it means to be human. And so there's a whole milieu of people where it started out with academics and engineers and CIA people, proven in the MK Ultra program at the Stanford Research Institute in the 50s and 60s, and then that starts to turn into the hippie movement and into kind of bleeding into the larger academia and into the Congress for Cultural Freedom, where art turns from something creating that things that are beautiful and inspiring into things that are depressing or just jarring and abstract. Um, and that's where in the 60s, books started to be written like Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, who was heavily influenced by Rudolf Steiner followers into writing this book that is total propaganda about why technology is bad. It's saying that DDT, this miracle technology, which was still being improved, wasn't perfect, but they were saying that uh, any cost to um, ecosystems or any cost to any specific species, even though DDT has the potential to save millions of lives, any cost to the ecosystem or to bees or anything like that is just too much, and we should just drop it right away instead of saying, "Oh, well, DDT is not perfect. Why don't we improve it?" So, Silent Spring was written. That's often credited with birthing the environmental movement, even though it goes back way further than that. And then another book comes out, and it's another one. It's the same kind of approach, but it's about cars. So Ralph Nader writes "Unsafe at Any Speed," and this is a book that you know I just drove in my car and I wore a seatbelt, and that seatbelt was there probably because of "Unsafe at Any Speed." Ralph Nader was writing, but the book is written in this maximalist way, where it says once again, cars are unsafe at any speed. The car industry, they don't want drivers to live because all they care about is their profits. And it's this kind of it's positioning people as the victims of technology rather than um, a more enlightenment view, which dates back to the Renaissance of people, man using technology to benefit man in a enlightened way. So Ralph Nader kind of ran out of steam with the car stuff in the 60s, and then he turned his attention to nuclear energy, which he saw correctly as something that people didn't understand. And it was something that was growing rapidly. It was increasing people's living standards. And it was Ralph Nader was one of many people at that time where they all kind of converged on nuclear energy as something that was not really understood. Uh, it was causing society to change rapidly because we were changing how we got our electricity. These plants were popping up everywhere. And they realized very quickly, thanks to a lot of the research done uh, at Stanford using LSD and MK Ultra techniques, that people were very afraid of invisible things coming into their body and changing them forever in a way that they could never even comprehend. That's the idea of radiation, where it's this idea that, oh, I'm being penetrated by these cells that are changing me forever, and I have no idea what the effect is going to be. And it's this hysterical thing because if we look at radiation, a lot of the fear mongering about it is completely overblown. Nuclear radiation is no different from the radiation that we receive every day from the sun or from environmental factors. Drinking a beer, for example, you get a dose of radiation that's equivalent of drinking a gallon of nuclear waste. Drinking a beer, you can imagine, like, if I was about to drink a gallon of nuclear waste, you guys would probably knock the glass out of my hand and say, no, don't do that. But if I'm going to drink a beer, you guys are like, oh, cool, we're partying, we're having a beer. Flying in an airplane, if you fly from Los Angeles to New York, you get the equivalent of a year of nuclear radiation. So, it's a completely unscientific concern to have. But at that time, they realized that the public's awareness of it was so low that they could exploit it and achieve their anti-civilizational, anthroposophic, Rudolf Steiner inspired, political goals very quickly. So in the 70s, it became more and more ripe for this, and the anti-nuclear movement was really building in the 70s, coincided also with um, all the way to the top of the Council on Foreign Relations and the United States ruling class in general, preparing for deindustrialization, where we're starting to shift towards China becoming the world's factory, and we're shifting away from building things in the United States. And we're just trying to get the United States ready for this long, slow decline, um, so that we can control the rest, so that these people can control the rest of the world and kind of retard the development of the rest of the world. So anyway, this was an opportune time in the 70s for anti-nuclear activism. The movie The China Syndrome starts to be developed, and this is a movie um, by Jane Fonda, who is a top anti-nuclear activist at the time, and it was heavily influenced also by a cult called the Creative Initiative Foundation, which literally came out of Stanford in the 1950s and the LSD experiments. By the 70s, they had morphed into an anti-nuclear cult, and they were heavily influential. People from them were heavily influential in shaping the China Syndrome. China Syndrome is written to kind of be the ultimate anti-nuclear movie, where it shows a nightmare scenario where there's a nuclear meltdown, and the authorities, and the greedy nuclear companies, are trying to mislead the public about the radiation that is penetrating their bodies and tainting their precious bodily fluids. So that movie is being developed. Nuclear plants are already slowing down at this point because of our shift away from the gold standard. Really hurt interest rates. Nuclear plants are very expensive to build. Once they're built, they're very cheap to run, but there's a lot of upfront capital costs. So interest rates skyrocketed in the 70s due to the gold standard and the shift to deindustrialization. So already it's slowing down. China Syndrome, it's coming out. There's all these ominous warnings about the China Syndrome, saying that, if you don't know what it is, you will know soon. And then the movie comes out, and within a week, an identical scenario happens in Pennsylvania at a nuclear plant called 3 Mile Island. The scenario at 3 Mile Island was identical to the sequence of events of the China Syndrome. And what happens is that the movie has been out for a week or two at that point, and then the media seizes upon this real thing happening in real time, where it was a completely controlled, thing. It was something that it was likely sabotage that caused internal sabotage was very common at nuclear plants at the time. It caused a minor problem at the plant. It was quickly contained. The radiation that was released into the air was immaterial. It was a very very small amount. But the media seized on this, and they caused hysteria because of the movie that had just come out. And what people over and over, people were saying, "Oh, I didn't know. I couldn't figure out what was going on at 3 Mile Island, so I went to the movie theater instead and watched the Jane Fonda movie, China Syndrome." And it created this, what I call in the article a mass formation psychosis. Uh, Public opinions about nuclear power suddenly just changed overnight, and people started to believe that instead of nuclear power, we should, use solar panels. Even at that time, people were like, "Oh, within 10 years, we'll just stop building nuclear plants. We'll shut all of them down, and we'll just use solar energy," which is exactly what people like Ralph Nader and all the environmentalists wanted. Was, "Oh, well, we're going to move to that," and what they call, basically what that means is that if we convert to solar panels from nuclear energy, we become a deindustrialized country. We won't be able to build anything. All of our economic activity, or even our household activity, will be contingent upon the weather, and kind of praying to the pagan gods that it's going to be a sunny, windy day, so that the wind turbines will spin and the solar panels will go. So it's all detailed in the articles, but it's a very suspicious series of events that led up to 3 Mile Island. Excuse me. There's a lot of evidence that it was an inside job. A lot of the investigators afterwards questioned why a more serious investigation was not done by the FBI. into internal sabotage. But the thing was, is it was too convenient for too many interests. So that's why that lie has kind of lived on. That when people debate nuclear energy today, one of the standard lines is, well, what about 3 Mile Island? Well, nobody was killed. There's no evidence that cancer rates went up. Multiple studies have been done. Even studies that were commissioned by anti-nuclear people, they're not able to prove that there was any increase in cancer rates due to 3 Mile Island. So it's kind of this very convenient thing that was used to deindustrialize the United States. Now, when we look at inflation and our power bills going up, it's kind of most people are not able to identify why that is, and it's because of things like 3 Mile Island, these kind of psyops that were inflicted upon the American people that led us to shut down our own power plants, reduce our own sovereignty, reduce our standard of living, and no one's really been held to account for it.
It's you mentioned the solar panels and the wind turbines, and most people don't realize that they can't be recycled, and even you see them dumping the wind turbines. But if you look at solar panels, because they've pushed that all over the world, and then with the geoengineering, they're blocking, and like with the Freedom of Information, they've actually got that from the UK confirming it's for climate change. So they're blocking out the sun. So they've first of all pushed everybody to get these solar panels, and then they're blocking the sun so that they don't get the same efficiency as they were kind of made to do.
Yeah, I don't know about the blocking the sun part. I don't know too much about that, but yeah, and there's no plan to recycle a lot of them. In New York State, where I live, forests are often bulldozed to build solar panels. Farmland is being plowed over to build solar panels. It just doesn't make any sense.
There was because with that documentary, the Gregor Galen Windsor, so he's basically a specialist, and he confirmed that it was actually propaganda, that it was all a lie. I mean, when you've got a specialist coming out and saying this, and I mean, this isn't just from that, like because it was the first time I've heard about this when I was doing the research for a call today. But it's like, the reality is they've been doing this throughout history, and it's just getting worse and worse. But it's actually, when you can go back and look at it and put the things together and go, all right, they were actually doing this because they wanted to have more coal, they wanted to have the oil and everything, and then this would have killed them industries.
Yeah, exactly. Nuclear power was rising rapidly in the 70s. There are documents from Germany where they were planning on replacing all of their coal, all of their oil with nuclear plants by the year 2000. And then in the 70s, this series of events happened. And something called the Green Party took a lot of power in Germany, which has led this campaign to destroy their nuclear plants, to become reliant on gas and solar panels and wind turbines. And then the Nord Stream pipeline gets blown up, which was a gas pipeline from Russia to Germany. So now Germany is just completely reliant on coal, solar panels, and wind turbines. And it's just insane, that their emission, if you care about emissions, which I don't personally, but if you care about emissions, their emissions have gone up. And the amount of pollution going into the air, which kills way more people than radiation does, the amount of pollution, I don't care about radiation that much. I don't think it's a big deal, as long as it's controlled and measurable. It can be monitored. But air pollution, that does really kill people, and it's gross. Who wants to walk outside and choke down smoke? I think it's pretty gross. So coal plants, that's an easy one where nuclear plants could replace all of them, and uranium is just a much cleaner fuel to burn than coal.
Because I saw, is it like 57 are under construction, and they're mostly like something like 49 is China, Russia, and India. Like, if we look at what's kind of under construction and what's existing, like, who's the leader in this, in nuclear power?
Yeah, so the last article, the third article in my series on 3 Mile Island, it talks about the anti-nuclear movement and how in the West, the anti-nuclear movement was a Western movement because all the nuclear plants used to be in the West. So it's kind of this act of, self-flagellation and self-mutilation that we were destroying our own nuclear plants. In the developing world, on the other hand, which was China and countries around, Asia and around the world, were loving nuclear plants. They couldn't get enough nuclear plants. They were very eager to develop the technology. And now what we're seeing is that, I'll start with the West. The anti-nuclear movement, which, like I said, 3 Mile Island was a big deal for. The anti-nuclear movement is suddenly being swept aside in the West. People that are really into the climate, even they are saying like, oh, we actually, all these insane goals that we've set for ourselves, we can't do it without nuclear energy because it also happens to be emissionless. So that's the reason that they're saying. But the real thing is that, as you mentioned, all the nuclear energy development is happening in Russia and China. And they're doing incredible things with nuclear energy. They're building small reactors. They're building reactors that can recycle spent nuclear fuel. So basically, you can have an endless cycle of energy that's being produced for free without, mining for more fuel. They're doing programs, whether China with the Belt and Road Initiative or Russia with Rosatom, where they provide really cheap credit to developing nations to build nuclear plants around the world. So, for example, Africa, they just got their second 4 nuclear plants. They have Africa had one very old nuclear plant in South Africa that I think England helped them build in the 60s. Since then, they haven't had a nuclear plant. People there have no electricity. They burn dung, to cook. They read, with a tiny battery flashlight at night. They desperately need energy there. So Rosatom just built 4 nuclear reactors in Egypt, which are the first nuclear reactors on the continent in over 40 years. And Rosatom is doing this all over the world, and they're building nuclear academies in Africa to really build an amazing generation of young nuclear scientists who are going to be able to not only use Russian technology, but also build their own indigenous technologies for Africa. And that's really where the nuclear developments of the future are going to happen. So in the United States, what people are seeing is that the politicians that used to hold on to power by saying, oh, all nuclear is bad, any amount of radiation is too dangerous, this is all terrible. They're not going back and reevaluating what they said in the past. They're not, they're not proving anything. There's no debate happening in the United States about nuclear energy. But what is happening is that it's just been replaced. All that new anti-nuclear stuff is being swept aside. And what they're saying is, well, China and Russia are doing it, so we have to do it too, because we can't let them we can't let them build up their countries. We can't let them build up their influence around the world using this nuclear technology. So all of a sudden, nuclear technology is good again. So what we're seeing are things like there was just a pledge at the COP28 conference where the G7 countries, nobody from the BRICS, but the G7 countries and a lot of Western aligned countries like Japan and whatnot, they promised to triple nuclear energy output by 2050. In the United States, the Congress and the Senate, they just passed a bill to deregulate a lot of the old nuclear laws that were designed to slow down nuclear development and prevent it from happening. There's a lot of pledges and whatnot from going all the way up to Joe Biden and John Kerry that nuclear is good again. So what's happened is that it's very clear. Like it's not because there was some public debate where all the anti-nuclear stuff has been disproven. It's simply the United States is losing its place as a hegemon around the world, and they're gonna press this nuclear button again and say, oh, the technology that was always good, was always very capable, very safe. We're gonna start using it again, because we're being threatened. So, and that's it. And it's also another thing about that is that a lot of bad things that aren't good for humanity, like kind of this transhumanist idea of AI becoming a singularity where we're all plugged into some kind of 24/7 AI data center that can influence our decisions every day and all that. That all requires an immense amount of energy. So that's why all data centers, companies like Microsoft, Amazon, OpenAI, Facebook, Meta, um, all their CEOs are talking about nuclear energy or directly investing in it. Like Bill Gates is invested in a company called TerraPower, which is developing what are called small modular reactors, which are perfect. You can put that next to a data center, and it provides very reliable 24/7 energy. So between data centers, AI, and cryptocurrency, which all require immense amounts of energy, all these plans require nuclear energy. So we could have had nuclear energy all along for powering things that are good for humanity, that raise our quality of living, raise our freedom, our sovereignty. But now what we're finding is that after decades, all the anti-nuclear stuff is being swept away because either we have to compete with Russia and China and build weapons to go to war or to sell to countries around the world, or we need to power our data centers, cryptocurrency operations, and AI centers so that we can control people. So it's not good. I'm a huge nuclear fan. I think it's the best form of energy. I think we should be working with Russia and China to develop fusion energy, which could shepherd in just an amazing period in the world where we have limitless energy. We don't have to go to war over energy anymore. But instead, what we're seeing is that the nuclear stuff is going to be used for a lot of bad things, and that is tough to see.
Hello. Is Roy frozen?
Oh yeah, Roy's frozen. That's why there was
frozen.
I
I thought he's just listening intently and not moving.
I blew him away.
But anyway, I think the question that came into my mind, Alex, is since I can understand that the baby boomers, that was also the time of the hippie movement, on why they got duped, right? And I can understand also now, after all studying much more about this connection of the hegemon and the energy, since the lockdown and since 2020, I could understand why the young people. But in your observation, which generation is a little more open to fully understand, or to understand what is the truth in this nuclear topic that we're talking about?
Yep.
Is it
definitely the youth? The younger, the better, because those people were not alive during 3 Mile Island. They weren't psyoped by events like that. They didn't take acid in the 70s, at protests. So I think I would say definitely the younger generation, and polling proves that around different age groups, it's always the younger people that are pro-nuclear, and that really scares the anti-nuke activists because they know they've lost the game.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it's good to hear that it is the young, because I still meet now and then young people who are really, let's say, they're really more into the green energy, climate, whatever. They build on that still. Okay, so at least now, because you know a little bit more of that. Roy, I can see you, Roy, at the bottom, but I don't know what happened with your video, but so he'll fix it. Oh, there you are. Right.
Yeah, both my internets are going, so yeah, they obviously don't want to hear this conversation going out. So apologies for that. I just because just kind of following up on what we were saying, because with the kind of propaganda that has kind of been going on all the time, if we look at like the Japan and the testing, because I remember seeing the video years ago going, that looks kind of weird, that doesn't look right, when they were kind of so-called nuclear testing, and then the camera, and I recently saw it again on Joe Rogan, they were showing it, like, so if there was a camera, like, it'd be destroyed. Then I saw stuff on Japan bombings, like during the war, that they were, like, I think you call it carpet bombing and then fire bombing. So I had seen before the so-called nuclear bomb, they had destroyed the city anyway. So I'm wondering, does that technology really exist, or was that scare tactics to stop nuclear power being used for energy?
Well, I mean, I think that predated nuclear power. I'm not even sure. I think that they were just starting to develop nuclear energy, for military purposes. I don't think they were trying to, scare the world about nuclear power at that point. I think it was more about scaring the world about the sheer destructive capabilities of nuclear weapons, and starting an arms race. But I don't think that they were trying to scare people about nuclear power at that time.
Okay. And if we look at the cities now, because they're thriving, I'm not sure when they actually started thriving, but because they kind of say, oh, if there's a nuclear disaster, it's like 1,000 years and all this kind of stuff. But that's obviously not true. I mean, even if you just look at that and forget about the first point, because
Yeah,
it's impossible.
People live in. I mean, I've never been there. I don't know, but I know Galen Windsor, who you mentioned. He's in my article. I know he was kind of like a weird, like, Birch Society guy. So I don't know if I trust everything that Galen Windsor said, but he was a former nuclear engineer, and he said that, and it's true. Lots of people still live in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Obviously, at the time, there was a lot of devastation from the explosion, and there were, like, terrible things that happened afterwards with the survivors who had gotten a really huge dose of radiation. But in terms of the long-term prospects in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they're habitable cities. I know they're growing, and Japan, not to downplay nuclear weapons at all, but Japan continues to build nuclear power plants for peaceful uses, even after Fukushima. Fukushima, that's another one where a lot of the hype, a lot of the leftover anti-nuclear activists, actually, from 3 Mile Island, they were the ones that hyped up Fukushima quite a bit, because the people that died at Fukushima, they died in the evacuation from the tsunami. They did not die because of the nuclear power plant. Only one person allegedly died from the Fukushima power plant. That was an old man who did some of the cleanup, who was a lifelong smoker and developed lung cancer years later. So it's not even, I'll give you that one, that maybe there's one person that died from Fukushima. But yeah, in Japan,
And just on that, because, like, I don't know, it was a fair tactics as well, but they were showing the nuclear leakage is even going across the whole seas. Like, I mean, is that all just made up?
yeah, it was heavily distorted. They were showing all kinds of things and saying that it was related to nuclear power. Another one of the latest things has been about discharge of what's called titrated water from Fukushima. This is kind of like built up nuclear waste that gets stored for a long time. And at some point, you do have to, it reaches a point where it's safe to release this. And like I said before about drinking a beer, you could drink a gallon of this stuff and get the same radiation as you would from drinking one beer. But there's still a lot of scare tactics. What happens is that as a geopolitical tool, unfortunately, China did this, to stick it to the West, but it's BS, because they do it too. They discharge titrated water all the time. But basically, saying that, oh, well, Japan's dumping nuclear waste into the water. Do you want that in your seafood? And the thing is, like, the ocean already, just from the sunlight, there's there's radiation in the ocean. This titrated water wouldn't have affected food whatsoever. I would love to eat all the food all the seafood from Japan that was titrated. It doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, it was the same exact activist from 3 Mile Island that have kind of hyped up Fukushima as this apocalyptic event, when really it was kind of a worst case scenario for nuclear, that a tsunami would hit a nuclear plant and cause a meltdown. But in reality, nothing happened. It wasn't a big deal. And Japan knows better than anybody around the world about the consequences of nuclear. And today, when faced with uncertainty about their access to oil and to gas and to coal and to all these other things, they're building nuclear plants again because they know that it's a safe technology and the benefits are worth the very, very small risks.
I've seen the schematics on your Substack, and just kind of the way that you've got a fail safe and then another one and another one. So there's so many different things. I'm assuming that the running of these should be offline, because if we look at AI cyber attacks, and like if there is really the enemy, if it's not all controlled by one person, like if there is really countries that are against each other, that if one wanted to attack another, they'd basically infiltrate their nuclear system to stop the fail-safe systems from working, and then to cause some sort of disaster.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is possible. If a country was it just never happens. If a nation was completely hell-bent on invading a land and then causing a nuclear disaster that would taint the land forever, no country has ever wanted to do that. I mean, you can see that with Russia, with the special military operation in Ukraine. There was a lot. The world was waiting. The anti-nuclear industry was waiting for Russia to go into the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, in Ukraine, where they were, doing the operation. And the world was waiting for them to trigger some kind of meltdown, and to say that Putin, the madman, is doing another Chernobyl to Ukraine. And that simply is not the case. They wanted to control the nuclear plant because it was a very valuable asset that could provide energy to the territory that they wanted to control again. They did not want to cause a meltdown. And now it's the Ukrainians that are doing risky attacks on the nuclear plant. It's this game of chicken where the plant is very secure from actual attacks. There's all kinds of automated. Today, nuclear plants are very hard to sabotage. They learned their lesson from things like 3 Mile Island. That used to be a lot of. It was never about a gang of terrorists or an invading country that would cause a nuclear meltdown. It was always a disgruntled employee that would say, that wanted attention for his grievances or whatever. So, these scenarios just, yet again, too, with Ukraine, and all the fear mongering about how unsafe nuclear is when you have a madman like Putin, knocking on your doorstep. Ukraine is actively building more nuclear plants because they're totally safe. They're great assets to have if you're a country that's trying to maintain your sovereignty. You don't. It makes you less reliant on getting gas from your neighbor that is, possibly going to invade. It just means that you're going to have cheap energy and a lot of people employed at a very high level. With a very high level of education and quality of life, to provide reliable energy. So, I understand. I think the nuclear industry has prepared a lot for that takeover scenario by a terrorist, but there's so many safeguards in place that it's not even needed anymore. It's all a lot of it's just automated that it's impossible to melt down a reactor on purpose.
Okay. And it's kind of in line with what you were talking at the start. You were talking about organic and everything, and I'm seeing like people using copper and energy from the ether. And I've even tested it myself. I put copper on a plant that I have at home, and it's after quadrupling in size. So it's like I usually don't believe what I see till I actually can test it myself. But also I've seen people with getting their energy from the ether, so they have like the spike, and like there's even people out there saying about the pylons and all that they're actually getting the energy from the ether. Is that something that you're aware of, or do you know much about that?
I don't know much about that. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just because it's impossible for me unless I test these things. But that's what I'm hearing. I'm seeing people saying they're getting their full energy from their house by putting a pole up and then just going through a generator. So at the end of the day, it's like, what's the best way for people to have energy for themselves? And
Yeah.
you know,
Well, yeah. I mean, usually the way people do that is that they'll put solar panels on the roof and they'll sell power back to the grid when it's sunny out. And that's the way that I'm most aware of. I know, like, if you're doing some kind of like self-reliance kind of thing, you could have a solar panel and a battery and do that, but I don't know too much about that.
okay.
Different
No,
strokes for
perfect.
different folks.
No, exactly. Okay. No,
I
thank you very
think
much, Alex.
I, I think from that point of what Roy shared is that it's just important that, again, because we are creative beings, we continue to explore, and there's nothing wrong to explore and to see things, right, or to experiment on things. But when we hear something, this is when I become cautious. That's my way of discerning. When I hear something that they keep saying no, 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 or like just a lot of public propaganda, it's all in the main news or something, then sometimes you start to be weary about that. So, but I can imagine, like, there are, I think, in some countries in Africa and some in other third world countries, they even have the ability to create, I think, some, because they don't have a lot of electricity, so they use bottles, empty bottles, and they put sand in it, and I've seen it work. And then one time in New York, I was with a small group of Filipinos, and we were kind of making our made up electricity, and it kind of worked, but not enough to be industrialized. And that's the point. So
Yeah.
if it's not enough, don't blame China, whose amazing recovery from what had happened to them is just unimaginable. Don't be jealous when we have, Alex, you mentioned that China became the factory. So who planned that? And see, and so for us and other countries who keep blaming China for the East, it's really like, before you keep blaming, maybe we should learn from that. And from your article, you even mentioned that China has proven its ability to build and do things. Okay, and I live with an engineer, an electrical engineer, and he did explain to me that before, it wasn't we the nuclear waste, we didn't have the way on how to really handle it properly, but there are ways now. So, and one time, Alex, we attended a lecture on this topic and other related topics in energy at Princeton University, because I live in the near Princeton University. We I I was anticipating where they're coming from, but I said, let me just go there and see really how they present it to the public. So yeah, they didn't say anymore that it's really bad, but it's at the bottom of their list, and they just keep insisting about the solar panel and about this. So they keep on. Then at the end, there's not a lot of time for question and answer, because sometimes that's my strategy. I attend, I ask a question. It may be what I know, but the question will be for people to think. They don't give you enough time. Then when you go in private to the speaker will say, "Oh, I'm not going there." I
I
said,
know.
yeah, he's not going there because whatever he presented, that's what he's paid for, or there's a lot
Yep.
of funding for that. So for people, it's truly important. Now, Alex, back to the title of your latest article. Shall I assume that when it's just really about controlling, and they said energy is power, and power in that control also. Whoever has that really can control the entire world, including the food. Is that what
Yep.
they're doing now? That's why we have to keep saying China, China, China. No, no, enemy, 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 and then Russia, Russia.
Yep.
And may I have your thoughts on the very obvious formal engagement relationship of Putin and also in Korea? It seems like it's really good partnership. Shall we expect North Korea to be highly industrialized in a way that is short time and efficient and effective for their people?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't looked into too much about specifically the energy angle with North Korea and Russia, but there's all kinds of partnerships that are possible there where Russia is just an incredibly fertile country for producing nuclear fuel, for producing natural gas. They have an oil company, Rosneft. And North Korea, as a country that doesn't have a lot of friends, having a trading partner like Russia, like China, by extension, that's extremely valuable and could be really great for increasing the sovereignty of your country and your ability to produce everything that your people need, and also to create some exports that you're special at that you can sell on the global market. But yeah, it's a total no-brainer, and also I think their ability to do industrial policy, given their political structure, it's a little easier to to fight off these outside influences that want to just have a free market, capitalist system that's all about increasing your supply of fake money. When you have whether it's not capitalism or communism. In my article, I talk about this kind of Hamiltonian approach that China has, which it's not, they don't build nuclear plants because they're communists. They build nuclear plants using financing, using credit, which I believe one of the earliest proponents of that was Alexander Hamilton in the United States, and he was inspired by Leibniz. But this idea of extending credit to things that are going to be good for your people, extending credits to things like nuclear plants, to factories, to hydroelectric dams, to farming industrialization, mechanization. North Korea has the ability to do that. If they have if they have partners like Russia and China, they're going to be able to do it a lot faster. So, it's an exciting thing to see.
And how about, this will be my last question, how about, do you know anything about what's the primary source of energy, or what's the potential in Congo? I asked that question because now it's obvious again that the Congo current ruling gentleman there is also having a good relationship with Putin.
I don't know much. No, I don't know much about Congo. I have to be honest. That's not something. They do have. They have a nuclear reactor that's been on standby, but for a long time. But other than that, yeah, I don't know a whole lot about them. But I do know, that in Africa in general, just what Rosatom is doing there is amazing. And the thing is too, with Africa, we have a good friend who's an African farmer named Justin Machogu, who's based in Africa. And just in general, we had him on our podcast, and he was talking about not just nuclear energy, but just allowing Africa to have fossil fuels, which, if you look at the rhetoric of the G7 and specifically of Barack Obama, where he talks about, if we let Africans have cars and air conditioners, we're going to boil the planet. So, African nations are very, very open to working with the BRICS countries like Russia and China, because they don't have the same lecturing about climate change. So I'm sure. Yeah, I don't know specifically too much about Congo, but I know for sure they're eager to work with Russia and China because there's just less less BS about climate change and fossil fuels with them.
Just a quick one before we end, because I saw one of the things on your Substack, the amount of deaths. related to the different things? Because a lot of people would think nuclear would be up the top, but it's actually, so you might just quickly touch on that, because it'll educate
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. I mean, I don't love the comparison sometimes, just because it can feel like, oh, we're just quantifying something, it's so wonky. But yeah, it's true. According to Our World in Data, which compiles deaths from different sources of energy, if you look at kilowatts produced by different sources of energy versus the number of deaths that are involved in the building and maintenance of the different forms of energy, uh, technologies like coal and oil, they have the highest rates of death because of the air pollution. It's not good for our lungs. It's provable that coal and oil kill people every year because of the air pollution. It causes cancer and different lung diseases. Um, then, surprisingly, solar panels and wind turbines, they actually cause more deaths than nuclear because people have to go up on roofs and do a lot of excavation, a lot of mining to produce everything needed for solar panels. So actually, people just falling off a roof, putting up the stupid solar panels, kills a lot of people, unfortunately. But with nuclear plants, it's extremely safe. There is construction that has to happen up front. A lot of concrete has to be poured, a lot of engineering has to be done. So people could die in workplace accidents from that. But then once the nuclear plant's running, it doesn't kill anybody. It's a very, very safe form of energy. So if you're looking at it, it's surprising. That's another like facts and logic kind of thing. If you're looking at it from that perspective, nuclear is a great source of energy. But usually, if someone's anti-nuclear, you can say that, and you can debunk every single question under the sun. It's all political. It has nothing to do with reality. Just like you brought up nuclear waste before, Grace. Nuclear waste has always been solved. There's always been a solution for it. The amount of nuclear waste produced by all the nuclear plants in the world, it could actually fit on one football field. There's that little waste. And if we were to actually look into some of the nuclear waste reprocessing technologies that Russia and China are advancing, we could even use that waste and turn it into fuel so that there's even less waste, and we just keep producing energy with it. So, it's all political. There's no, all these arguments, and that's why I wrote this latest article, is that these arguments, they were addressed a long time ago. They've been addressed for a very long time, but the arguments don't matter anymore because we have to keep up with Russia and China, and we're starting a new Cold War.
Thank you, Alex.
You're
And
welcome.
we're very grateful for everything you do. I mean, it's intense. Although you say this is a 4 minute, how do you say, 10-minute read, 12-minute read, but trust me, when you you don't know everything, it becomes like an hour or more. Because when Alex writes, he puts a lot of links and he put a lot of sources. So I want to really get to know and understand more and more. So I have to keep clicking the other links. Okay,
Well,
so
thank you.
it's a whole dissertation.
I'm glad you like the articles. And we got to get Fox on here sometime because he's got his next documentary coming out. So we'll have to be in touch about that because I know you'd enjoy talking to him too.
And yeah, please invite our viewers to anything that you wanted to invite them to.
Yeah, we got spacecommune.substack.com. Follow us on X, Space Commune, and then we've got a Telegram channel. We have a regular website too, spacecommune.com, in case you don't like Substack.
And what's
Well,
your podcast called, so people can follow the podcast as well?
Our podcast, we haven't really been active with it anymore. We're mostly focusing on just articles and this documentary. So, but you can look up all the old episodes are up. They're still really good. It's called Space Commune. So it's Space Commune everywhere.
So everyone, don't forget, please help and support in any way you can, just by subscribing, free or paid, whatever you can do, and or sharing the information is best, and really is studying more, because you don't want to, grow old and be stupid and dumb not to understand the real thing. Okay, so and please share, and this will be uploaded in many platforms and in BitChute and other platforms. So just find the Freedom International live stream, and Roy and I will always be here to welcome any of you for any question, and I could always forward it to Alex Dimitrios if you don't go to his Substack. And Alex, thank you, and please, oh, keep doing what you're doing, and please keep coming back whenever you're free. Okay,
Will do. Thank you so much for having me.
thank you.